So, Pasquale from Through the Uncanny Valley.
Oh, are we going?
We're going.
Oh, God, help me.
Thank you very much for joining us in Milan.
Yes, thank you for having us.
No, and congratulations with your film.
Thank you.
It's always the same opening question, which is the whole idea, the background. How did this come to fruition? You know, where did it start?
Oh, my God. It started with probably a series of breakups.
Oh. Okay.
We're getting deep.
Oh, no.
We're going psychological.
We've all been there.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the point. Well, the original, I would say, tagline, if you will, was "Satisfaction is the death of desire."
Right.
Okay, process that for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it applies to as many things as we can handle psychologically, even physically. So I took that into consideration when I was writing, and I wanted to do something that had a timeless quality to it. So if it feels futuristic, that's wonderful, but it's anachronistic enough that it shouldn't have a time or a place specifically. And so that way it maintains its universal appeal. And that was a bit of a mandate from the very beginning of writing this piece.
So now, it's interesting because you said this was all originally the German, it was the breakup or breakdown of relationships. Mm-hmm. So at what point did you get, sorry, with time, are we talking like 1, 2, 3 years ago?
Oh no, just in terms of humanity, it just sparked it just a few years back probably, and then you start to think about what people accept in their lives, what is comfortable and secure and how it feels, and what our instincts are telling us and how much we suppress it. And so it just causes me specifically to turn inward and express something about it, and I think it's universal in its appeal that way. I would say it's something that has been percolating for my adult life. So, yeah.
So and it's then pen to paper, write a story or write a script.
Mm-hmm. Very quickly.
How long did that take?
I think it was about 15 pages in about the same amount of days.
Seriously?
In and around there.
And so, what we're talking about, literally one draft of a script?
No, about 16 drafts of a script, yeah, in and around there. I mean, writing is rewriting for me, so especially when it comes that simple, usually there's a problem. It's probably too safe in your choices, and mine were, so I had to revisit it several times, right up until pretty much shooting.
And are you, when you're shooting it, do you, that's a bit of a stupid question, I was going to say, do you change it on the fly? I guess the answer to that probably is yes.
Of course, yeah. You sit there and you go through rehearsals, and depending how into it your actors are, and I had the fortunate pleasure of working with really talented actors who were as invested in it as I was, and so they offered a lot of really interesting insight, and it's like, yeah, you're feeling this, and let's slow it down, speed it up, remove this line, add that line, etc. So sometimes it can be a difficult thing because time's always working against you, but it's nice to be in that creative space and have that constraint as well. So. And
when you've got let's say the working script, let's say it's the final one, I know you're going to hone it as you go.
Of course, yeah, the shooting script, yeah.
Are you always sort of trusting enough that you will go what you got? Do you let anyone else look through it?
Oh yeah, of course. To
get their input, I guess.
I do. I have to be very careful with that. I think most artists do. I don't want to get sort of sucked in the idea that I write something and then. Imagine like a painter just taking a brush stroke across a canvas and then looking over his shoulder saying, "You like?" And after another.
Yeah.
So here's the piece, here's the idea. Let everyone have a crack at it in terms of their own creativity and imagination, which is one of the pleasures of being a director. I hire the people that are going to offer me as much creativity that I wouldn't have thought of and let them roll with it. And then if I'm communicating what my vision is properly, then they'll come back with something I think that I can trust to work well, and things elements I may not have thought of, which I appreciate. Then there's a certain point where you sort of I personally just sort of sit back and say, yeah, that's a great idea. We're still going to go with this. Originally, it just feels better. It looks better. There's certain elements or aspects they might not have understood when they were conceiving it.
And you talked about the cast, and how did you go? How did you go about casting? Was there
Dinner.
A casting cut?
Dinner and drinks.
So did you have any idea who you were going to cast?
No, I had a few people with headshots and through the office and some suggestions from producers and so on, and I met with them. And Martin Cummins is an award-winning actor. He's fantastic. I met with 3 or 4 different people for Bloom, and some people were telling me to just get into a room and cast the shit out of it, but I didn't really want to do that. There was a very specific kind of man that I was looking for, a certain kind of experience. I met Martin, we had coffee. 20 minutes later, it was just his body language, and I knew he was the guy. He read the script, and he basically said to me, "This is my life. You've written down my life," and that's an interesting thing to hear, you know, because I don't have the experiences he has. So when someone says something like that to you, it's nice to know that you've got a bit of a broad appeal in terms of something deeper.
And how long was the shoot?
We shot for, I think, 3 days, 3 long, grueling, full days. Yeah.
And I'll imagine when you say full, you're like crack of dawn to late evening.
14 hours. Yeah.
And what about post?
And pushing it. Post took a while. Sound was probably the biggest factor in that. We had a rough cut about a month and a half later after we wrapped, and then I think we had a picture lock about 6 weeks after that or so, and then we got into sound, and that was tricky.
What was the problem with that?
Sound, because I didn't want to use anything futuristic. This wasn't soft-core science fiction in the sense that if you notice the science fiction elements in it, then great, but that's not the focus. So no flying cars, and it wasn't Blade Runner. We weren't having a focus on that sort of thing. So trying to come up with sounds that didn't have these metallic, tinny, cold things to it. It had to feel more like brick and had a sterile feel. So went through a series of different templates and so on. So it was difficult to get the exact sound. When he hits her, for example, across the face, I want a metallic, hand-on metal kind of sound to it. It had to feel more like carbon fiber, for example, and flesh and bone. So, but it was eerie enough in the way that it sounded that you couldn't quite place it. So I just wanted to have sound that you can say, "Oh, I know what that's made of," specifically when it's supposed to be part of the mystery.
And in hindsight, I mean, the film was finished. You're looking at it the first time. And you're watching. You're thinking,
"God, I made a lot of mistakes."
That was my next question.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you see. I think any artist of any stripe, of any quality, will look at what they have done, and people will come along and view it far more objectively than you ever will, and you have to just be able to live with that. But yeah, in the screen, I couldn't go into the room just because I've seen it so many times. I know where all my mistakes are, and I'm just, there's so much anxiety about it. But then you just focus forward, and on the next one, you think you've learned something, but.
Yeah, and let's be honest, whatever you do in life, everything's easy in hindsight.
Of course, yeah.
And we'll all do things differently.
Sure.
Pasquale, thank you.
Pleasure was mine.
Wonderful, thank you very much.